Jerome, just drive. Victoria's voice sliced through the quiet hum of the Maybach. Her diamond bracelet caught the sunlight as she scrolled furiously through her phone, barking orders into her Bluetooth. Tell Tokyo we'll renegotiate. No, we won't. I don't care if they're offended. Just fix it. From the driver's seat, Jerome's eyes flicked toward the rearview mirror. Calm, focused, silent. Behind him, Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics, looked like she'd stepped out of a Forbes cover shoot. Power suit, pearl earrings, and a tone that could make grown men stutter. But today, she was unraveling. 3 interpreters canceled. She hissed at her assistant on speaker. You're telling me no one in New York City can speak Japanese or Hindi? Laughter burst through the line from one of the board members. Maybe your driver can help, Victoria. The car filled with nervous chuckles. Victoria smirked. Oh, I doubt Jerome knows anything about billion-dollar mergers. Jerome's hand stayed steady on the wheel. But as she spoke, he quietly corrected her under his breath, his tone polite, almost invisible. It's Nakamura Holdings, ma'am? You pronounced it wrong. Victoria froze. Her reflection met his eyes in the mirror, steady, unreadable. Excuse me? He didn't flinch. You said Nakamura, the vowels softer. Then he went silent again. The call fell quiet, too. Someone on the other end muttered, Did your driver just correct you? Victoria forced a laugh. Oh, he's just observant. But the smirk didn't reach her eyes. Outside, the city blurred past, glass towers and flashing billboards mirroring her anxiety. The company she'd built from nothing was collapsing, deal by deal. The Japanese-Indian merger was her last lifeline. If it failed, so did she. Her phone buzzed again. A new message glowed on screen. Interpreter canceled. Final meeting in 2 hours. Victoria's breath hitched. She stared at the words like they might disappear if she blinked hard enough. 2 hours, she whispered. Her mind raced. No translator, no backup. No chance. In the front seat, Jerome adjusted the rearview mirror just slightly, enough for their eyes to meet again. Calm versus chaos. Silence versus desperation. For a brief second, it almost felt like he knew something she didn't. Then she turned away, muttering, You're just the driver, right? Keep driving. Jerome's gaze lingered in the mirror, measured, unshaken. A faint hint of a smile touched his lips, and as the Maybach rolled toward Sterling Tower, the audience could feel it. The storm was coming. Are you kidding me? Victoria's voice exploded through the glass walls of the Sterling Tower boardroom. The sound of her palm slamming against the table echoed across the marble floor. 2 hours before the meeting and every interpreter disappears. Her executives sat frozen, afraid to breathe, one mumbled. Tokyo says they can't delay again. Mr. Nakamura's already on his flight. Another added, and Ms. Singh is threatening to pull her team entirely. Victoria's jaw clenched. We are not losing this merger. Do you understand? If this deal dies, Sterling Dynamics dies with it. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush hope. From the hallway, Jerome stood quietly holding the car keys, waiting for her signal to drive her to the airport. He watched through the glass, the woman who barked orders like thunder, now pacing like a trapped lion. Every sentence she spoke came out sharper, faster, fueled by panic. Get me someone, anyone, who can translate Japanese, Hindi, and Mandarin, she snapped. Ma'am, that's impossible on such short notice, her assistant stammered. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Then go make the impossible happen. The assistant scurried out, nearly bumping into Jerome. Everything okay? Jerome asked softly. The man just sighed. You don't want to know. Inside, Victoria dropped into her chair, running a manicured hand through her hair. Her phone buzzed again. Bad news piling on bad news. Nakamura Group requests confirmation on legal terms. Ms. Singh needs clarification on cultural protocol. Without interpreters, she couldn't even answer. Her confidence, the armor she wore like steel, began to crack. Her voice lowered, trembling now. Why does this always happen when everything's on the line? The board exchanged awkward glances, but no one spoke. To them, she was still the untouchable CEO. The woman who'd built a billion-dollar empire from her father's small logistics firm. But deep down, she knew the truth. Sterling Dynamics was drowning. Jerome turned to leave, but then her voice stopped him. "Wait, Jerome." He froze at the doorway. "Yes, ma'am?" She forced a tight smile. "Cancel your evening plans. I'll need you to drive me to the Nakamura Singh meeting." "Of course." Her eyes flicked over him. Calm, composed, the same unshakable stillness she noticed that morning. It irritated her somehow. "You always this quiet?" Jerome simply said, "Noise doesn't fix problems, ma'am." Her lips pressed together. "Right. Well, I need solutions, not silence." She turned back to the window, staring down at the city she once ruled, now slipping out of her grip. Below, cars crawled through the streets, and somewhere among them, Jerome's Maybach waited, polished, ready, loyal. He looked up at her office window before walking away. He'd seen this kind of arrogance before, in embassies, in negotiation rooms, behind podiums. And every time it ended the same way. The powerful panicked. The silent one watched. And when the moment came, the silent one spoke. "Pull over right now!" Victoria's voice cut through the air like a blade. The Maybach screeched to the curb outside the luxury hotel, its black frame glinting beneath the city lights. She slammed the door open, phone pressed to her ear. "What do you mean the translator's gone missing again?" she shouted, pacing across the sidewalk. Her heels struck the concrete like gunfire. "Yes, I understand, but the meeting starts in 20 minutes. Jerome stepped out quietly, holding the car door for her as the wind brushed against his uniform jacket. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The chaos around her said everything. Victoria turned, exhaling sharply. "Can you believe this? $1 billion deal on the line, and I'm surrounded by amateurs." Jerome's calm voice broke the tension. "Maybe not amateurs, ma'am. Just people under pressure." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I don't know pressure?" He met her gaze unflinching. "I think you've forgotten what it looks like on other people." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Victoria scoffed and walked toward the hotel entrance. "Stay close. If Nakamura walks out of that room, Sterling Dynamics is finished." Inside, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Japanese, Hindi, and Mandarin voices overlapped, each side confused, impatient, offended. Documents were on the table, unsigned, untranslated, and now useless. Victoria tried to keep her voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, we can sort this out." But the room was already fracturing. Ms. Singh's assistant whispered to her in Hindi. Nakamura's aide frowned, checking his watch. Jerome watched from the doorway, silent, still, absorbing every word, every gesture. Then, in perfect Japanese, he spoke. "Mr. Nakamura says the delay is understandable. He only asks for reassurance that both sides remain committed to mutual respect." The entire room froze. Victoria's head snapped around. "Jerome, what did you just say?" Jerome continued calmly, switching languages as smoothly as breathing. "Ms. Singh, he's not offended. He just wants confirmation that the equity split will honor both cultural traditions." Gasps filled the air. Executives stared at him like they were seeing a ghost. Victoria's lips parted, speechless for once in her life. You speak Japanese?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "And Hindi. Mandarin, too, if needed." The negotiators turned to him now, not to her. Within minutes, the meeting that was falling apart began to flow again. Words turned into understanding. Anger shifted into laughter. And the billion-dollar deal that seemed doomed minutes ago was suddenly alive again. Victoria sat in stunned silence, watching her driver command the room with quiet confidence. Every sentence he translated built a bridge she couldn't. Every glance reminded her of what she'd overlooked. When the final signatures were placed, Mr. Nakamura bowed deeply to Jerome. "Thank you, sir. Without you, there would be no deal." Jerome nodded humbly. "Just doing my job." Victoria's voice broke through, softer now. "Apparently, I never knew what that job really was." He smiled slightly, opening the door for her once more. "Don't worry, ma'am," he said. "You do now. Why didn't you tell me?" Victoria's voice trembled, not with anger this time, but disbelief. The deal was done. The champagne was flowing. Yet all she could do was stare at Jerome across the marble hotel lobby as if seeing him for the very first time. Jerome smiled faintly. "You never asked." Her hand tightened around her glass. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages and you've been driving me for 3 years?" He looked at her calmly. "Driving pays the bills. The languages. They open doors people usually keep closed." Victoria sank into a velvet chair, her tone softer now. "I don't understand." "You could have been anything. A diplomat, a negotiator," he interrupted gently. "Or invisible. Sometimes that's the same thing." His words hit her harder than she expected. For years, she'd walked past him like he was part of the car, not a person. Now that same man had just saved her billion-dollar empire, not with power, but with respect. As the noise of the celebration faded behind them, she said quietly, "You know, when you spoke in that meeting, everyone listened." "Even I did," Jerome chuckled lightly. "Respect is a universal language, ma'am. You just have to speak it first." Victoria leaned forward. "Then teach me." He raised an eyebrow. "Teach you?" "Yes," she said, almost pleading. "I built my company by commanding people. But today, you did what I couldn't. You earned their trust." For the first time, Jerome looked unsure. "It's not something you learn from books. You learn it from being ignored long enough to know how it feels." Her eyes softened. "Then maybe that's exactly what I need to understand." He gave a quiet nod. The two sat in silence, not awkward but meaningful. Outside, the night lights of the city glowed against the glass, reflecting both their faces, the CEO and the driver, side by side. After a long pause, Victoria whispered, "You know, when you translated for them, it wasn't just words. You made them feel seen." Jerome smiled. "That's the trick. People don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel." Victoria looked down at her reflection in the glass. "And what about you, Jerome? How do you feel?" He stood buttoning his jacket. "Grateful. Because today someone finally saw me too." He walked toward the exit, his calm footsteps echoing through the lobby. Victoria watched him leave, not as her employee, but as the man who changed the way she saw the world. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the smartest person in the room. "Name your price," Victoria said, her voice trembling as the elevator doors slid shut behind them. "After today, you could work anywhere in the world." Jerome didn't look at her. He was staring out the glass wall at the skyline, the city lights flickering like Morse code messages only he could read. "It's not about money," he said softly. Victoria frowned. "Then what is it about? You just saved $1 billion deal. You could have your own office, your own team." He turned to face her. "Do you really think I want to work for another company that only sees my skin before my skill?" Her breath caught. The elevator hummed, descending through floors of glass and steel, each level reflecting their faces back at them, CEO and driver, power and silence. Jerome continued, his tone steady but sharp. "9 languages, Victoria. I learned them because I had to. Every time I moved, new country, new tongue. But the hardest one to master?" He paused. "The language of respect." Victoria swallowed hard. "I didn't know." He shook his head. "You didn't want to know." The doors opened to the parking garage. Cold air rushed in. The same black luxury car that once symbolized distance between them now sat quietly in the corner, waiting. He walked toward it, but she followed. "Jerome, wait. You said it's not about money, then what do you want?" He stopped beside the car door, his hand resting on the handle. "I want people like me to stop being background noise in stories like yours." Her expression softened, not defensive this time, just human. "And what will you do now?" He smiled faintly. "Teach, travel, use these languages for something bigger than translation, connection." Victoria stepped closer. "You'll change the world," she said quietly. He looked at her, a spark of warmth in his eyes. "No, I'll just remind it to listen." For a moment, they stood in silence, the powerful woman and the man she once dismissed. But something in the air had shifted. Then, as he opened the car door, Victoria said, "You know, when I hired you, I thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say." He chuckled softly. "Turns out I was just waiting for you to stop talking." She smiled, the first genuine one he'd ever seen from her. "If you ever need a ride," she said, "I owe you one." He glanced back at her, the city lights gleaming off the polished car. "Maybe one day," he replied, "we'll drive somewhere that speaks only one language, equality." The engine started. The sound echoed through the empty garage as the car rolled forward, headlights cutting through the dark. Victoria watched until he disappeared into the city, a man who once drove for her, now driving his own destiny. And as the silence returned, she whispered to herself, almost in awe, 9 languages! 1 mission. Wait, who's translating that? The French delegate barked across the table, his voice sharp with disbelief. The boardroom froze. Cameras, executives, and translators all turned to the far end, where Jerome, the man they once called just the driver, calmly adjusted his earpiece. Victoria's heart pounded. She hadn't planned this. But when their official interpreter fumbled mid-sentence, Jerome had quietly stepped forward, fluent words flowing from his mouth like music. Now, every powerful gaze in the room was fixed on him. "Excusez-moi," Jerome said smoothly in perfect French, then switched to Mandarin without missing a beat, clarifying the misunderstanding that nearly cost the company a billion-dollar contract. The Chinese representatives exchanged glances, impressed. Their tension eased. The French side leaned forward, listening. And Victoria, she just sat there, stunned. For the first time, she realized the irony. The man she once laughed at was now saving her empire, one language at a time. As the negotiations continued, Jerome didn't just translate. He commanded the rhythm of the room. His tone softened when tempers flared, sharpened when stakes rose, bridging worlds with words. It wasn't just linguistic skill, it was emotional intelligence, diplomacy born from a lifetime of being underestimated. By the time the final contract slid across the table, signed by both parties, the room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered his name. Victoria forced a smile, but deep down, she felt something heavier than pride. Regret. When the last delegate left, she approached him slowly. "Jerome, I don't even know what to say." He gave her a small, measured smile. "You don't have to say anything. Just remember what you saw today." She nodded, eyes softening. "You didn't just save this deal. You saved me from myself." Jerome exhaled quietly. "People like me, Victoria, we've had to prove ourselves in rooms that never wanted us there. Today wasn't about money. It was about being heard." She looked away, her voice cracking slightly. "And you did. The whole world just heard you." He started to gather his notes, but she stopped him. "You could work for the UN, Jerome. The State Department, anywhere. Why stay here?" He hesitated, then met her gaze. "Because change doesn't happen in big speeches. It starts in small rooms like this one, when people finally see who's been invisible." Her eyes glistened. "Then maybe I've been blind for too long." He smiled faintly. "Then start looking differently." As he turned to leave, the company logo gleamed on the glass wall, his reflection standing tall beside it. Once a driver in her shadow, now the man who changed her legacy. Victoria watched him go, a quiet tear escaping as she whispered to herself, "He didn't just speak 9 languages, he spoke the truth." Outside, Jerome stepped into the crisp morning light, the city alive with noise. But for the first time in a long time, the world finally felt like it was listening.